Hey, what's going on, guys? Hope that one will be fine, and welcome back to the Vue.js crash course. So in this video I'm going to explain to you everything which is included in Vue.js, and there's still a lot of concepts to cover in Vue.js, but I try to explain the concepts which are most important and which can help us to create our very first single page application, right? So let's jump in and get started here. Alright, so what actually is Vue.js? So Vue.js is a front-end JavaScript TypeScript framework. It's a very small library for Vue, and just like other frameworks like Angular or React, so it's also a framework which can help us to build a single page application. So SPA means that we can build a single page application, run on the browser, and the rest of all the things are controlled through DOM, which is the document object model. As far as the community is concerned for the Vue.js really climb and really get popular from last 2 to 3 years, and it's really gained a good popularity in the community. And most of the other frameworks, just like Angular, especially Angular, is very complex and very difficult to understand. It has a lot of concepts. So Vue is comparatively much easier than the Angular or the other frameworks. Again, every single framework has its own benefits, has its own advantages, but I'm not gonna explain you the differences between them, but it's just to explain that the Vue is comparatively much more flexible to use. So why actually we use Vue.js? So Vue.js is a flexible technology that you can employ to build modern apps without using a lot of resources. You don't need to apply different resources just like Angular or React have. So Vue is very much simple, and it has very simple boilerplate. So it also helps us to provide a lot of built-in solutions, just like so the new Vue.js comprises of the composition API, which basically is a very good feature. So later on we were using options. Option is a great, but it has compiler drawbacks when trying to match our access view logic. So the composition API will be introduced as a built-in feature, which is much better solution to deal with the code organization. So if you guys have no idea about what actually options I'm talking about, I have no idea about the composition API, we still gonna cover in the coming videos. But this course is again very basic, so I don't want to explain or make things difficult for you to understand. So just for the basic, you just keep things in mind that it's still Vue is really providing a lot of built-in solutions. So which comprise of VF, which has a lot of VF, VLs, V-model, and there are bindings. I want to explain things when we start the coding section. So apps are very smaller in size. If you ever install the other framework, especially Angular still comprises a lot of bunch of files. But here in this case, it has a very basic boilerplate of files. So it's not something which is very much large in size. It's very smaller. So anatomy of a component, which comprises of every single Vue file, comprises of output, functionality, and the style. So output is something which we can see the data on the browser, so we can pass the data. If you can see the scripts, so scripts are basically the brain part of the Vue application. So everything that we pass inside the data, this is going to return it through the template, and with the help of string interpolation, we can see the result on the browser. This name is basically the user, which is name of the file, and the other different methods are an object which we can define inside the data function, so which we can see later on when we start the coding section. So styles are something which we can do like CSS, where we can style. So in case of style, we have scope style for the individual file, or we can do the styling for the global level. So we have something like Vue CLI tools for generating and building Vue apps. We can just install the Vue just like other frameworks with the help of command line interface, and which also Vue also provide features like Babel and ESLint for linting, and Babel, which help us to understand the JavaScript. So it also provide a good feature UI tool for creating an application through Vue.js. So we can also create an new application installation with the help of UI. Alright, so I think this is enough for the slides, so let's jump in and get started for the installation. Alright guys, so the first thing you need to do is to make sure you have your npm install. You can either work with your recommended for more users, or you can install the latest version. Alright, so this is all completely up to you. So the next thing you need to do is there's installation for two different things. The first is the Vue.js.org. if you are going to get started here, so there are multiple things, so you can learn about what actually is Vue.js. some of the installation through the through CDNs, or you can also learn from some other factors like template syntax, or you can learn about the raw HTML attributes. So there are the concepts that you can definitely learn about, that v-bind shorthand, which we are going to use here. So this is v-on click @click. So this is the shorthand and the full syntax. So that is something which we can use in our example, right? So you just need to see if you need to familiar about. So this is the event binding. All right, so this is everything that we can look over on the example that we are going to do, right? So next we have our cli.org, where you can learn about how we can install the Vue with the help of command line interface. So let's first click on the get started here, and then you need to click on the installation. So these are the very few requirement for the installation. All you need to do is to simply type npm install -gg for the global, and this is going to install the Vue with the CLI from Vue -version. You can also check the version of the Vue. So let's jump in and get started for the installation. So let's open up I'm already on my desktop, so let's create here a new folder and set that to be Vue_crash_course. So this is going to be a course, and that's fine. Now I'm opening up with my git bash. I have already installed my git bash, so make sure if you haven't installed, all you need to do is to just simply go to the git-scm.com, and I think so this is a very good command line. So if you're using Windows, you can just simply click on the download for Windows, or if you're using Mac, or you can just simply find out the installation for that, right? So very basic installation. Okay, so I'll open up my command line interface, and let's first type here npm install -g @vue/cli, and as far as I type enter, and this is going to install the npm install for the Vue. All right, so this is going to take some time, so I'm going to take some break for it, and once it's done, I will be right back. Alright guys, now the installation has been done. Now all I need to do is to just simply open the cd, and let's open up the Vue-app and just open up the directory, and I'm going to open up with the Visual Studio Code, or you can simply press code or dot, and this is going to open up with the help of Visual Studio Code. Make sure you have your VS Code installed on your system, and you can run on your terminal of VS Code, or you can run on your git bash. So I'm just simply type here npm run serve and press enter, and this is going to open up on the local host port number 8080. So let's going to open up the browser, and let's type here localhost and give it the colon 8080 and press enter, and there we go. So we can you can see that now the app is running on the browser. All right, so this is the first way that I've explained you. We can open up with the command line interface. Now the next thing I'm going to do is to just cancel my server, and now I'm going to open up with the with the UI. So I'm going to go out of that directory, a main directory, and let's open up the cd, or I just need to type here which is the Vue UI, and let's press enter. So it's going to starting GUI. All right, so yeah, it's open up on my Edge, but I need to open up on my Chrome. So I'm going to copy that and just paste it right over here and press enter, and there you see now you have opened up your Vue project manager. So with the help of GUI, you can simply install by simply creating. You can just press the create here, and this is going to show you the Vue-app. I'm going to you can also change the directory if you want. Like if I just click here, let's see what's going to open up. Right, so there are multiple options. Yeah, I just go back, and there we go. So we have a folder with the name of Vue Crash Course, or you can simply, okay, I'm fine, I can just simply create a new project here. I click on here, it will ask you the package manager, which is npm by default. So I click on here, and all good for now. And the name of the project, let's give it the Vue-app, which is already exists. So let's set that to be Vue app-GUI. I simply press next, and it will ask me to select the preset just like the command line interface. So I'm going to have my default preset, which is Babel and the ESLint. Let's press create project, and this is going to take some time. So I will be right back once it's installed. Alright, now we are inside our dashboard. Installation is done. We have some questions here. Welcome to the new project. I just click on the understood, and there you see on the left sidebar there are options like for plugins, dependencies, configuration, and tasks. Let's first go inside the plugins. So the plugins are VUE/CLI service, and there is a plugin for the Babel and the ESLint. So all just we have done on the command line interface. If I go to the dependencies, so the dependencies are Babel, ESLints, and these are all the dependencies which are inside the package.json file. If I go to the configuration, so this is going to take some time, right? And there you see, so we have a VUE CLI configure, we have an ESLint configuration, and for the task we can also serve just like this is basically the hot reloads. So this is like we run the server. If I click on here, and you see there are statistics like we have status, we have errors, warnings, and by default it's off right now. I can just simply click on the it should be on run task. Yeah, if I click on the run task, and now the task is running, and if I just click back here, it will stop the task, right? So once I click on it, and you see the configuration is going to run and the server is run, so the build is successful. And if I just simply click on the open app, and there you see, so the app is now running on the port 8080. All right, so basically this is the two differences between I've explained. You can either learn with the CLI, but recommended way is again CLI, graphical user interface, something which I haven't used, and I don't have much idea with it, but we can run with the CLI. All right, so that's really much it, and let's start with the coding section. All right. Alright guys, so welcome back to the Visual Studio Code. Make sure you have your all files import inside your VS Code, and we have all the files, and I already run the server by just simply type npm run server, and this is going to open and run your server. And there you see that I have a server running with the Vue.js with port number 8080. So let's first talk about the file structure about the Vue.js, right? So we have the very basic file structure. So we have all the dependencies which are inside the package.json file, which include the version, which include the name of the app, which is Vue-app, right? And we have the dependencies, which is Vue. We have the Vue dependencies install. We have the scripts running for the running the server, which is npm run serve. We have the dev dependencies, which includes the Babel, ESLint. All right, so these are the very basic dependencies which are required for Vue.js applications to work. And the next thing, which is a very important file, which is the source, and sorry, not inside the source. First, we have to talk about the public folder and inside index.html. So whatever you see right here is basically running on the browser, and this is the very important concept, which is the Div Add of Id. All right, so this ID is basically a placeholder to the other components, right? So which actually means is if I go to my source and main.js file, so we bring the import view inside here. So and we have our import app.view component, and that's where we have initialized the view and then rendered the app component, and basically this mounts the app, right? So basically this ID is coming from the which I've shown you inside the index.html file, right? So this is basically the very important important file, important element, and we bring this inside the main.js, right, which is the entry point for the app for the Vue application. All right. So the next thing I'm going to show you is we have the components, we have our components, we have assets, which only have the image, which is logo.png, which you can see. This is the Vue image, right, which you can see on the browser, and which is running, which is basically loading from the assets. So next we have the app.view component, right? So we have the message, which is basically your props. So props are just like an object which you can define and pass the different values in object. So here you could see we have our image on the top, and we have import the hello world component, which you can see that the component that is already created, which is hello world.view, and on top of it you could see that everything that you see here is all the links and all the HTML which is coming from here, right? And this message, which is the welcome to your Vue.js app, we pass the message through props. And if I go down here, so the structure is very similar, like we have our scripts first we have the templates. The templates have everything which you can see the output. Next we have the very important scripts tag where we can pass some different props and methods and data. And next we have our styling, which have the scope. So basically scope styling means that the styling is limited to a component, right, which you can see the scope attribute to limit CSS to this component only. Alright, so this message is basically passed from the app.vue component, and here you could see that we have bring the hello world component inside here, and we have the name of the file which is app, right? So we bring this in, we have the component name which we pass inside the components object, which is the hello world, and basically down here we have the hash app ID, which is basically the global styling of this complete app, right? So that's been understanding here. And if I'm going to change the message, right, if I just set that to be Vue crash, sorry about that, so Vue crash course, if I press enter and this message passed to the hello world.vue, and basically with the help of string interpolation we can show up the message. So if I go back to my browser and you see here we have the Vue crash course. All right, so that's how we can pass the message here. Okay, so that's very much it for now, and now I'm going to do here some few changes. So let's first create here a component. I'm going to create a very fresh new component here. So let's get the name of user list, not with the capital letters. So user list dot view. So if I just press enter, and this is going to create an empty file. So I've already installed the extension. So first I'm going to explain you about the extension. So here you could see that Vueter is the extension that I've installed. If you just simply click on it, and in my case it's installed, so you just need to install that. What it actually provides you the advantage, it provides you the shortcuts, and especially if you're using some other code editor, or if you're using Sublime or even VS Code, might be if you haven't installed the extension. So some of the text you see is not highlighted. So in order to make it highlighted, you need to install the Vueter extension. And another feature that it provides for the shortcuts, so the first thing that we have for the Vue.js app is the template. So if I just simply write the template here, you could see it will ask you the html.vue, you have the pug.vue, so I want to html.vue as my template engine. Next we have the script here, so I bring this in for the JavaScript. And we have another which is style for the scope styling. So I just simply press enter, and this is going to create a very basic structure, right, for our component. And next thing I'm going to do here, if I just go to my app.vue, I just need to remove every single thing from here and saves it, and just see if our app is running. It's still showing me Vue crash course. Yeah, now it's fine. Okay, let's refresh this, and now everything is blank because we remove everything from the app.vue. Okay, so the same thing I'm going to do here with, let's create here a template first. So down here, I'm going to create my scripts here. So let's create here a script, and the last thing that I need is a styling. So let's define here style and saves it. All right. So I have created here a user list.vue. Now in order to pass my component here, so I need to do here is, let's define here the import. Let's first import the component here. So with the name of user list from the let's define the path here. So /component and the name of the component, which is user list. All right, you can also pass .vue if you want to have, but I'm happy with the user list. All right, so it's all up to you. So let's first bring this component inside the export default. So here is an object which is component. So let's define it first here. So we define the component, bring this in, and now this is user list, right? So you need to keep one more thing concept here. So if inside the template, if you just try to define one div and you want to create another div inside the template, so this is going to show you an error which says that you cannot create the template root. Required exactly one element. You cannot add multiple template roots. So make sure that you have a single root, right? Okay, now just define that inside here the user list, and if I go back and try to save it, you see there is an error. It says that the template root requires exactly one element, and basically we are importing the component of user list. If I go to the user list, you see nothing is there. So in order to define at least one single, you see here the error, it says it at least requires one root element, and there is no any root element. So I have to define here. So let's set that to be view VUE.js crash course. Tries to save it. And now if I go back to the browser and you see here Vue.js crash course, all right? So that's the first thing. You can also define here, like if I just want to define h1 and let's set that to be hello world, and if I try to save it, and you see now we have our headings for the two times, which is the hello world and the Vue.js crash course. All right, so that's for the first concept. And now if I go back to my user list and if I just try to, we can also make data dynamically coming from the state, and if I just try to explain it, so let's define first. So I need to define the name, which is the user list, which is basically a good convention to follow. It doesn't affect any application, but still it's a good feature to use. So you need to make sure you have defined your name here. And now let's define here data, which return the state. So let's first define the data return, and if I just pass here, let's suppose greetings, and let's define here hello, and I just remove this for now, and with the help of string interpolation we can pass the data. So let's define here greeting. So if I just try to save it and go to my browser, and there you go, here you see the hello world and the hello, right? So that's how we can pass data, and we can also have some methods which we are going to do, which is a very essential part. We can pass methods, like we have multiple methods, so we can also pass the methods, right? So that's what we are going to explain in the next part, and I'm going to take some 5 to 7 minutes a break for every single section. So that's it, and I want to see you in the next section. Okay guys, so welcome back here, and now we have our data which we have passed to our template. Now the next thing I want to here is we want to pass the data array of an object. So let's first define it. So we need to pass the data just like we do here. So I'm going to remove this for now. Let's pass here something like, just make this paragraph tag, right? Just set that to be users list. All right, saves it, and there you go. So we have our user list, and now I'm going to do here is let's write some data inside it. So we have an array of an object with the users. So I pass the data, and we have an array of an object. So I have two fields here. We have our name, so I just give it the name of John, and let's give it the status of false. Let's give it the name of Adam, status of false. And later on I'm going to change that. Basically this status means that we can change toggle, like we can toggle the status to true or false, means they are active, inactive, so something like that, which we can do with the check boxes. So the next thing I'm going to do here is to create another object. So you can create as much you want, but I'm going to create here 4. So let's give it the name of Harry. So status of true. And the last one that I want here is the name of Sarah, and the status should be true, false, make that false, right? Okay, so I have the array of an object for the data, and I need to define some, I just need some styling, but before I should do styling, I need to just do some few changes here inside the template. So I just want to create here the container first. So let's first create here a container. So inside container, I'm going to create a row. I'm not using Bootstrap, I'm just simply using a styling for here. So inside here, I'm going to set that to be something like, you could say Vue.js crash course. And just after the div, I want another row, and this row is basically for the where we have our input field. So I'm just going to set that to be add user listing, right? So later on we have to add the row for this. Okay, so let's create another row for here, and let's set that to be paragraph tag, and that's where I'm going to show all the listings. So users listings, right? So now I need to do some styling for here. So let's do and go down here. Make sure it should be scoped, and I want to give it the width of 20%, that container. and this I just forget to bring the class, right? So the container, and let's give it the width of 20%. And I also want the background. Let's give it the color for the background, which should be #1577B0. All right, and the margin of 10 pixels auto to make things into the center, padding of 5 pixels, and I just need a border of 2 pixels solid dark blue. Alright, that's fine. I just need to give some paragraph tags, so just give it this font size of 18 pixels. And for all, I need the margin and padding to be 0. So let's give it the margin 0, padding 0, and the box sizing should be border dash box, right? And I also need to do some global styling, just the background color that I need to change. So all I need here is just to go, if I just go here and just remove the scope, I just want the global styling, which means that we can access to the other components. So I just give it here a body, or I have already copied that, just paste it now. So body, and let's paste the background color which I have. So I'm going to copy it from here and just paste it down here, right? So make sure that you have copied the color, right? 0C3C57. Right, so if I just going to save it, and let's see how it looks. So this looks something like that, right? And I need the font color to be white, so just make that global changes, right? So I'm going to change the color to white, saves it. All right, so this looks much better, right? So later on we can add the users listing. We have the users listing, right? Okay, so let's go here, and we have already created here users list.vue, and I need to show those listings here on my on the users listing paragraph, right? So what I'm going to do here is to create something like, which is known as a directory for the view, which is v-4. So let's, inside the row, I'm going to do here is just remove the users listing, which you could see here. We have the user listing, but we need to show the array of an object. So I'm going to remove that for now, and let's pass here v-4. So there are multiple directives for Vue. So first I'm going to use here v-4. So I'm going to pass here the user and the index. So let's pass here user and the index in user. So we loop the data. So because we have an array of an object, so I'm going to use here loop of an data. If I hover on it, it says the element in iteration expect to have v-bind key directives, and this is basically used when we have to check that the data is not keep repeating. So there is a directive that we use, which is known as v-bind key. So I'm going to use here v-bind key equal to index, so that it knows that we are not looping the data, same data again and again, right? So it's giving me here error here v-4. It says the keyword let is unreserved. So v-4 equals to user index in users. I forget to bring here double quotes, right? And I need to define here v-bind colon key equal to index. We don't need that here. So saves it, that's fine. Okay, so now let's define here the if I just simply type here user.name. So basically user is the loop of the data, and I need to show the names here. If I try to save it, and there you go. So we have the John, we have the Adam, Harry, and Sarah. So we can see all the data on the loop, right? So that's it. We can also see the status if we want, let's suppose, which is actually Boolean, but still just want to show you we can also show different other objects, right? So user.name, right? Okay, so I need to pass more data. In order to pass the more data, I need to create another component to pass my data. So for that, let's first create here a file with the name of user.vue, and inside here I'm going to create here a template. So the very same thing I'm going to do. So template, let's create here the scripts. So scripts here, and next I'm going to create here a style. So here inside the template, I'm going to do some few changes. So first create here the div, and let's set that to be paragraph tag and user list. All right. So if I just try to save it, and you see nothing happens here, right? So because we need to pass that inside our user list as a component, so let's first pass here. So just like we did inside the hello world.vue. So I'm going to pass here the component. So import the name of the component, which is user. Actually, I need to pass it on top of the script, right? So import user from, let's pass here dot slash and the name, which is user, right? Okay, so let's bring this in as a component. So just copy that and just go down here after the methods. Let's define here the components. So I bring this in user, right? And now if I go back and refresh, still nothing happens. It says the user component has been used, but has been registered but not used. All right, so we need to bind the data for that. How we can bind the data? So let's first go inside the I'm going to remove this, or you can do here is simply pass here user and just remove this closing tag and the user dot name, which we are accessing the property, and close that from here and saves it. And still you see we are getting the loop of the data, which is user list, from the other component. So that's where you could see the user list, but we need the data. So in order to pass the data here, we have to pass something which is known as vbind. All right, so let's first go inside my user and directive, and here I'm going to define something which is known as vbind, and we can bind the data and get its value through props. So v-bind, we get the loop of the data. Let's define here the name with the name of user equal to user. Now let's pass this user to the props. So what I'm going to do here is, let's go inside the export default. Let's first define the name, which is user, and down here I'm going to define here props, and inside props we are access all the properties of an object, which is name and the status. So we define it right here, and if I'm going to remove this and let's pass here user dot name and try to save it, and there you go. Right, so that's how we can see the users listing, right? So in the next part I'm going to do here is we have the checkboxes where we can toggle the data, and that's it for this video, and I'm going to take some short break and I will be right back. Alright guys, so up to this mark we have our listing of the users, but we need to do some more additional stuff, like we need to have some toggle with the help of checkboxes. We can toggle the names, we can strike through the names, or we have to add the users, we have to delete and added the users. So these are all the stuff that we are going to do here. So I open up my Visual Studio Code as my text editor, and we have done already a few of the stuff. So let's jump inside and let's just first create the layout of this complete application. All right. So I'm gonna go inside here and let's move inside source and click on the app components, and let's move inside the user.vue. So for now we only have the user.name, which we just show on the which we show from the array of an object and loop the data, and with the help of we can show the names of the users, right? And we pass through it. So here I'm going to create here a very basic layout first. So we need some checkboxes here. So I'm going to first create that as a container. I'm going to create some CSS classes later on. So let's first create a container. Inside the container, I need some checkboxes. So let's first create the input, and with the help of image, I'm going to create the checkboxes. I don't need any name in the ID. So I'm going to remove that for now, because once we are not doing the data persistently, it's just data, we are adding the data manually in the array of an object. So keep sure that we are not adding persistently, so we don't need any name or the ID. So right after here we have the class. So let's give it the class of name my input. So that's basically I add the class for adding some CSS, right? And down after the paragraph ending tag, I need to have a form for basically so we can add the by the help of edit button, we can populate the data inside the form, which is the input field. So let's gonna do here is let's create here input type of text, and I need to give it the class form-control. We are not using the bootstrap class. You might be aware of the form-control or something like that. So we are not using any bootstrap or something like that. This is all custom CSS. All right. So down after that, we need some buttons. So just right after the buttons, I'm going to create some so let's create here 2 buttons. The first button I'm going to create here is the primary. So I'm going to give it the class of btn-primary, just like bootstrap class, but keep remember we are not using bootstrap. So copy that, and I'm gonna use that for, so there are 2 reasons. The first primary class that I give is for the edit button, and for the delete button I'm gonna give it the class of danger, and let's add here danger and saves it. All right, so let's go down underneath that, and I'm gonna do some styling. So let's first look for scope styling, which is restricted only for a single component. So I'm going to give it all. Static means for all. So might be most of you don't want to add some styling, but I just need to make the app a little bit look wise better. So I'm going to do some styling here. So box dash styling, not so much styling, but just at least to make that a little bit better. So we have a class for the checkbox, which is my input, and for giving the class for the checkbox, I need to give it the type of checkbox, and let's give it the weight and the height. So let's give it the width, which I want to have is all right, so we just need to give it the width of 16 pixels and height of 15 pixel. And next I need to have the content, which is empty in my case. So let's make that empty. I just need to give it the value of content. All right, and the next thing I need here is the background color, which I need is white. All right, so that should be the white button. All right, so next after that we need to give it the class for my form-control. So let's create here a class form-control, and inside form-control I'm going to give it the width of the input field, which is 100%, and next we need to give it the padding of 5 pixel, and let's give it a margin from the top to be 5 pixels. And if you guys don't want to do any CSS, you can simply copy it from my GitHub repository, right? So that can really save your time. And now I just need some background color. So let's give it this, because this course is not for CSS. So really sorry about that. So if you guys don't want to do a lot of stuff, so background, I just give a light gray. All right, and the border that I need here is 1 pixel solid, and let's give it that, right? Dark gray color. Okay, so for the colors, I just want to copy it from my code, so that can really save my time too. So all you need to do is simply just for the primary color, I give it the background of blue, the color of the font is white, and the padding in the margin and the border is none. Same stuff here for the danger class, despite the color is red, right? So not much changes. And we need to have here a very important thing, which is the line through, because we need to toggle the data. So I need to pass here something which is line through. So let's give it here a class, which I'm going to bind it later on, and I can explain you what I'm going to do. But first here, I just want to give here is to check the status. So let's give it the class of is dash status, and inside here, so I'm going to give it the class of is dash status, and let's give it the text dash decoration of line through, which means that we can strike the line on the text, right? Which means that we can easily understand that we can toggle, right? Okay, so if I go to my which looks like something like this, which I need to improve, and I'm going to do here is, let's first go inside my user list.vue, and I need to change the padding, I believe. So for the padding, I'm going to give it the margin padding, which is fine. I need to give its width of 50%. So if I give it the width of 50% and go to the browser, so this looks something like that. Now it's very fine looking app, right? Okay, so I'm going to open up my inspect. Just want to refresh this, that everything looks fine. Okay, so let's open up the console here. Now, what I need here is I want the data to first strike. I'm not looking for how we can toggle the data using VUE directives, which I'm going to explain you. First, we can strike the lines on those who are true. So what I'm going to do here, we have to use some v-bind for the class. So let's go inside that. Make sure that you have your class. If I go to my user.view, you see here is a class of is-status, right? So I'm going to pass it to those names which have status of true. So let's go inside the paragraph, which is P, and if I'm going to use here a directive which is known as v-bind. All right, so let's bring here the colon and the class, and here I'm going to type, and remember that this is completely different from a class. So this is v-bind class, right? Class binding, and this is something which you have used in Angular if you ever worked on that. And I need to pass here some parameters like parentheses, and here inside that, let's bring here the name of the class, which is status, right? And now if I just want to show you, this is basically coming from is-status, right? Okay, so right here I'm going to do is to just give here user.status, right? And if I just try to save it, and if I go to back to my browser, and you see on the name of Harry there is a dash, right? So there is a line through it, and basically this is just because we passed the class and all the status which are true, so it can just have a line through on it. So if I want to show you, if you go to the user list, just make that the first one to be true, John, and if I go to my browser and you see that the line through on it, right? Now with the help of this checkbox, I want to toggle it. So how I'm going to do it is just a very simple way. I'm just gonna close that, and all I need here is to create something is another directive right after the inside the checkbox. We have a directive which is known as v-on, right? So inside v-on I want to have a change. We need to change r means toggle it, and inside here I'm going to define the toggle user. So let's create that, and so this is basically the method that we created inside the v-on change. All right, so right after here, all I need is just copy that, and let's move inside your scripts, and inside scripts, which should be right after here. So right after the props, I'm gonna define some data. So I don't need to define data now, but just create that. So inside data, we have a return. So we have nothing to do for the data for this moment. So next I want to create here the methods, and inside method we have to create a method. Let's create the method name to be toggle user, and inside that let's first console the log and just check this out, right? So test, saves it, and if I go to here, it says that invalid handler for event change. So let's first go back and refresh this, and if I just try to click on it, and you see now the test is working, right? Okay, so let's go back here, and despite of having the toggle user inside console.log, let's define here this dot and access the object which is the user, and inside user we have a status. So I want to just change the status. So if that status is true, I want to change that to be false. So how we're going to do it is just give it that whatever it is, just change its status. So this dot user dot status. So that means that if it's true, change to false, or if it's false, change to true. All right. So if I save it, if I go back to the refresh this, and if I just try to click on the checkbox, and you see now we can just simply toggle that, right? So as simple as that, right? So I hope you guys understand that. Okay, so in the next section, I'm going to explain to you how we can delete it. So I'm going to take a break, and I will be right back. Alright guys, now we just need to delete, how we can delete the data using Vue. So let's first go inside your code and open up the source and components and go inside the user list.vue. However, you have the user.vue where you could see the delete danger button where you can delete that. But I need to pass here something. So when we have to pass some methods from parent to the child, we have to pass here a directive. So if I just want to show you real quick here, so I want to just make this a little better looking. So I just want to give some spaces and press enter. All right, so next down here, I need to pass here something which is known as @. So this is basically the method which I'm going to pass from parent to child. So I'm going to use here on-delete. So basically, again, on-delete, it's something which is always be a format, just like we put dashes for the v dash bind and something like that. So I use the same format, and which is a W3C policy. And inside here, I need to define a function with the name of delete user. And we are looping the data with the index, so I'm going to pass here the object with the user, right? So that means that for each individual we can easily access its all properties. Now down after here we have defined the on dash delete, which later on I'm going to pass it to the child, and we have to define it by the emit, which I will explain you how. Right, so down after that I'm going to just copy that delete user, and now let's define inside the methods. So I'm going to down here, and inside my methods I'm going to define my very first method, which is the delete user. So I just copy that and I just pass here the object. So let's give it the user, and inside here I'm going to do is, so let's do is this dot user, which actually means here all the users which are included. So I want to access all the users, and this dot I'm going to use here this dot user dot filter. So filter method, which is a higher order JavaScript function which help us to filter the data. So I want to filter the data, which is all the data which I am trying to filter should be shown. Only which I want to delete, just neglect that. So how I'm going to do is just simply pass the here user, and which is basically the you could say just change that to delete user, right? So I changed that to delete user. So we pass the we pass the index here, which is user, and let's look for all the user, which is user dot name. I want to access the user dot name, and should not be equal to that user which I want to delete. So just simply put here delete user dot name. So what actually it does is just bring all the users and filter the user, and we pass the user, and we have to access the object with the name of name. So we access the object name, and we want to only show all the user despite of the user which I need to delete. As simple as that, right? So if I just want to save it, and now if I just go back to the browser, nothing is going to happen, right? So how we have to do, what I'm going to do next is to emit our emit the click. How we can do is, if I just go to my user.vue, and here you could see just like inside the button, I'm going to define here something which is basically a click event, and which is defined by the @click. So let's first going to go inside the button and define here click equal to, I need to emit it whenever we are using click event or click. So we have to emit something. Let's define that, and whatever I define here, if I go to my on dash delete, and if I just simply copy that and just simply put that inside it and saves it, if I go back and refresh this, and let's have a look. If I just try to delete John, we can delete that. We can delete Adam, Harry, and Sarah. All right. So if I just refresh back, every data came back, because again we are not using any database, any persistent database. So that's it for the deletion. And I just want to make this danger to delete, right? And I also need to remove this hello world, which we don't need now. So let's change that to delete. All right. And I want to remove this hello world, which is actually coming from the, where is this coming from? App.vue. Yeah. So just want to remove that, right? So if I just try to save it, and this looks fine now, right? So that's it, and I want to see you in the next part where we are gonna add the new listing. All right, so now the next thing we are going to do is to create add user listing, right? So this heading is just for showing us the position that where we will have our input field, and that's how we can create a new user. All right, so the first thing I need to do is to create a component here. So go inside your source component, and let's create here the component with the name of add user.vue. All right, saves it, and just simply add the template just like we do. After the template, we have our script tags. So let's bring these script tags, and the last thing that we need is a style. So let's bring here the style and give it the css-scope.vue, right? Saves it, and that's fine. All right, so inside the template, I'm going to create a very basic form for, I don't need any action, so just remove that. And inside here, I'm going to give a very basic input field. So let's give it the input type equal to text, and give it the placeholder of enter user, right? and saves it. Inside the export default, I need to define the name as we do. I just want to make this actually it's add user. Yeah, that's fine. Okay, it's capital A. So I need to define here add user. So let's create there add user, and let's define here the data, which we don't need now. Just create that. So data return, and later on this is going to return the new user, right? That actually means whenever we have a new V model, means when we are adding the new data, because we have no any persistent database or the table that where we are going to store. So we have to create a V dash model with a new user. We pass the new user inside the V model, and I will explain you later on when we are going to go there, right? So it just saves it, and if I go back, and definitely nothing happens. And now we need to define this component inside our user list.view. So let's define here, let's first import here. So I'm going to import my all the users. So let's go down here. So import add user from, let's define dot slash, and here we have the add user. All right, so we define our add user. Let's bring this inside the component. So I'm going to copy this add user, and let's put that inside the components. All right, so if I go back and you see it says the add user component has been registered but not used, just like we did before. So that means we need to add the user. So let's go on top of it, and I don't need this add user listing text now. Now let's create and include the directive. So I'm going to define here add user, and let's define slash for ending. If I go back and refresh, and you see now nothing happens, and now we have our text field. All right, so that's fine. Okay, so what I'm going to do here next is, just like we pass the method from parent to child, I need to define here at the rate and on, and let's give it any name you want. So I'm going to give it the name on dash add user. Again, I'm applying the W3C standards. Make sure that you have your dashes here. So inside add a user, let's define a method with the name of add user, and we need to pass here the event, right? We pass here the event just because we need to pass this event to the child, and we can just extract the values. So let's do and go down to the I'm going to create a method add user. So let's go inside the methods, and I need to go top of it. So add user, and definitely add user must have a new object that we have to define. So let's give it the name of new user. So inside new user, I need to push the data inside the array, which we have static array on top. So we need to push the data. How we're going to do is just access the this.user, which is the name of this array of an object, right? So this coming from this. So this dot users, I need to push the data inside my array. So this dot users dot push, and inside push I need to define my parameters, which is a name. So I need to define here the name, which is basically the new user that will be created, and the next thing we need is the status, which is by default I need my status to be false. All right, so if I just try to save it and just put here a comma, and if I think it's gonna work, but it definitely it's not. And you see the page is also refreshing, so we need to avoid it by the prevent. So how we gonna do it, I'm gonna explain you. So let's move inside your add user.view. I don't know for what reason when I click on it, it moves to capital A, right? So inside this form, let's do here is first I need to define the V model. Basically V model requires that whenever we are typing some data and we need to pass it to the function, we need to define V dash model. To type whatever the text we type, we need to add it to the array, right? So that's why I'm going to define here V dash model, and let's define here new user. All right, so we define this new user. Let's copy that new user, and let's define it inside the function. Sorry, not the new user. I need to give it the name of function on top of the form. So let's submit that. But in order to submit it, I need to use here something with the name of add user. So I created here a method. Let's define here the method after the data. object. So I'm gonna create here methods, and inside method I'm gonna create here add user. I need to apply here a check that if there is nothing inside the text field, so that means this dot, and I need the new user which is coming from the v dash model with whatever the text value we pass here. So I'm gonna copy this and paste it right here. So if this dot new user dot length means if the length is present, and if it's greater than 1 means if we have some value. So let's do emit. So we're gonna pass here $emit, and inside here you see just like we did before, we need to just copy that from the input field which is on dash add user, and let's define right in here. So on dash add user, and next we need to get the value of the new user which is defined by the new user. All right, saves it, that's fine. And on the other condition, once the value is submitted, I need to refresh it. So just give it new user equal to empty. All right, so this is gonna empty our value, and I need to pass it inside the return, inside the data. So let's give it the name of new user, right, which is by default empty. So that's fine, and we have to check this now. Let's refresh this, and if I type it something, and you see it flashes off very quickly and it returns back. So what I'm going to do next is to, in order to prevent the form submission, we have to use something which is known as prevent. So I need to just simply pass here prevent, and if I go back and refresh this, you can just simply type anything, and if I type new data, new user, enter it, and you see the data is now going to add. Now if I just simply try to press enter, nothing happens. If I refresh this, the data removed because we are not using persistent database. All right, so that's it for the adding the new data. And the last thing which we are left with is the added functionality, and we will see in the next section. All right, so up to this last point, now we have to look for the added option. Rest all things are working fine for us. So you could see I want here to, when I click on the edit, so we have the value, I need to populate on the text field, and when I just move out from this input field, and means that we move the focus out of the element, we use a method which is known as blur. So this gonna edit the data, and we can also hide the text field that where we can use some conditional statement like VF and VLs, right? So we want to look over it in a little while. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do here is, so let's open up your user list.vue, where you could see we have our v-bind, we have get the data and bind the data to the other component, and now we have used then pass the method from the parent to the child with the use of add the rate. Now the next thing I'm going to do here is we can edit it. So in order to edit it, I need to define here something very much similar to what, so let's give it here add the rate on dash edit. All right, so inside here I'm going to define a function method name which is added user, and here I have to pass some two different objects. So two different parameters means that first I have to pass that the value that I need to update. So I'm going to pass here user from the loop, and the next thing I need here is to pass the event. So the reason why I pass the event, because later on I want the new user to be updated, so I pass here an event, and let's create here a function down to the method. So I just copy that function, and let's after the delete user, so let's define here a function with the name of added user. All right, so this function comprises of two things. The first thing that we need is the existing user, which is the user object, and the next thing that I need here is to get the new object, is to get a new user, right? So means that we have to update the data, we get the existing data, and we have to pass the value for the new user. So how I'm going to do it, it's like if I pass here user dot name, means that we get the user name as an object, whatever I pass here, and we need to pass the value which is the new user. All right, so I hope it makes sense to you. So basically this is the user dot name which I want to edit, and this will pass the value for the updated, right? So that's it, that's for the added case, right? Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do here, so make sure that I have passed here the on dash added. Now we need to pass it to the child component. So let's go inside our user.vue, and definitely for the editing I need to pass here some function, an event. So let's create here a click here. So @click equal to, and give it the name of start editing. So I define here a method with the name of start editing, and by default I need to return the prop or the value, which should be false. Means that it's only be editable when we click on the edit button. And now I need to return here something which is an object. Let's pass in prop is editing, which should be false. And I need to and I also need to update a new user later on. So a little while it's gonna be empty for now, right? And so this new user will come from the v-model. So v-model we get the value through v-model. Just you see when we have add the new user. So that's how I have to define here new user. All right, so that I hope it makes sense to you now. So the next thing I'm going to do here is to first define the start editing. So by default the is editing is false. Now I need to go inside my methods. So let's go inside the method. Just after the toggle user, I need to define here the method name should be start editing. So I define here a method. Make sure that the method name should be the same. So I'm going to copy it. Yeah, it's fine. Okay, so start editing should have a condition. Now if I need to go inside this condition, because the condition is only true, so I need to, if I just add here this dot is editing, and if I just try to console the log, let's console log it and give it the this dot is editing and saves it. If I go back to the browser and if I just try to click on somewhere, right, so this function is not going to work for now. So if I go to the start editing, all right, so let's give it the alert here first to check this out. So I click on the edit and it's working, right, but it's not fulfilling the condition because the condition is not going to be true. Now if I just give here not equal to, that means now the condition should be true. If I click edit and it says it's false. So basically the condition is only true if I give here not, means that I'm switching the true into false. Right now if I go back and click on the edit, now the condition is true, right? So I said if the condition is true, so this go inside the if condition, and this should be not actually. So I need to remove that. I need to show you that how we can pass the correct condition. So if it's editing, means if we click on the start editing method and we have to edit their data, so we have to pass here this dot. Let's click on the new user. That's the new user that we have passed from the prop. So this dot new user should be equal to the value that we passed in the prop. So this dot user. So this brings this data bring us from the v-model, and we pass the value to the name. And I want to make that this dot is editing to be true. Means that the condition should be true. All right, so that's fine. And on the other case, if that condition is not valid, so I need to make the I have to apply some condition. So rather I should create a condition here. I need to create another method. Let's create the method name to be n editing, means the editing should be end once we have added the data. So that means we have to make this dot is editing to again false, right? So that it should not be editable after that. And now we need to emit it, just like I need to pass here on dash edit, which is coming from the edit user, right? So I pass this edit user, we emit it, and let's pass the new user. We pass the new user value. So basically this dot new user will get the value from the v-model which we passed. Like if I'm gonna show you, so whatever the value we type inside the new user, so this gonna get the value and replace it with the new user, and we passed it after we end the editing. So this is the this dot end user. All right, so end editing, and I know, yeah, just forget to bring here comma. All right, so this dot is editing is now gonna false, and we pass the new user once the editing is done. All right, so let's look for the condition. It says empty block statement inside the user.vue. So what actually it means, yeah, I need to give it here this dot and the editing, right? Okay, so now if I just try to save it, and I hope this error is removed. All right, that's fine. Okay, now if I click on the edit, you see we can now start getting the value, which is very fine, right? Oops, actually I need to click on the edit, right? So once I try to edit something, I need to edit it, and you see the value we get is fine, right? But I need that when I click on this edit, I don't need to further show this input field. So in order to do that, we need to remove the outer element. It means I need to remove the element. For that, I need to use here something which is known as blur. So let's gonna use here blur right after the input. So let's create here blur equal to, and I need to, when I click on the start editing, so this gonna work for us, or no, actually I need to, okay, that's fine. Start editing means that whatever we type here, it should edit on the paragraph or on the name which we have just typed. Okay, so if I just try to add here Adam123 and try to click edit, actually I have to click here something, whatever I'm trying to write, it flashes off. So it's not working the way I need it. So let's go inside my blur again, where it goes. So @blur, start editing, but it doesn't work in my case. So yeah, I need to create here, yeah, I need to submit the form. Yeah, I forgot to bring here. So submit.prevent and equal to, and once my editing is done, I need to end the editing from the form, right? So means that when I submit the form, it should end the editing, right? Saves it and also stops the form from refreshing. Now if I just try to refresh it, and let's click on the Adam, if I type 123, click on here, and this is gonna work, right? So whatever I type here, this is gonna show us on the field. But it's look really weird that whatever I typing here, yeah, I can see on the input field, but I don't need to further edit. If once I click on the edit and go back there, so I need my input field to be hide. So in order to do that, I need to use here a directive, which is again a very good conditionals which we can use in Vue, which is v-if and v-else. So I need here is once I change, right, if I added something and once it's done, so once I have apply here v-if condition, if there is no editing, so I don't want to see anything, I don't want to show anything. But on the other case, if there is no any editing, so by default we have another condition that we can apply here, which is v-else, which I'm gonna use here inside the form. So if there's no any editing, then show the form, otherwise it's opposite, right? So if I go back to the form and let's refresh this, and if I click on the edit and change that 1 2 3 4, just like that, if I just 1 2 3 4, whatever I type here, and you see when I click on it, so my input field hides when I use blur, right? So when I moves out of the element. So that's the edit option. So I hope you guys learned something from this. I think so this course is really long, and there's so many other things which are still included in the Vue.js, but this is just a gist of it, just the basics, that how we can use v-if, v-else, event, and props and something like that. So that's it. I hope you guys learned something out of it. So if you really love this video, please don't forget to like and subscribe the series, and I want to see you for the next courses.